Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Red Hat webinar. Before we get started with today's presentation, there are a few items to quickly mention. You should see a taskbar at the bottom of the screen. Each icon is assigned to a particular element of today's webinar. If you're not sure what the icon does, hover over the icon with your mouse and the box will appear to tell you the function. Also, next to the slides window, you should see a blank Ask a Question box that allows you to type a question. After you type the question, click Submit to send it to our presenters. Feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar, and our presenters will address as many as possible following the presentation. You can submit any technical questions related to the webinar platform here. Please close down other browser windows or applications that might be splitting your bandwidth, including VPNs, as these might interfere with the audio or video stream. If you experience any connectivity issues, please refresh your browser. Today's session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive an email within 1 to 2 days of the event with a link to view this presentation on demand. Now I'm going to hand it over to today's first speaker so we can get started with the presentation.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us today for today's Red Hat Convergence. My name is Andy Fisher, and I want to take a few moments before the main event. You are about to see a live session called Life is Easier with Smart Management and Insights. And one thing you should know about today's panel of customer experts is that they're all members of the Red Hat Accelerators community. So I thought I'd pop in and before we get started and let you know who are the Red Hat Accelerators and why you should care. So the Red Hat Accelerators is our customer advocacy program here at Red Hat. It is a global program and a customer community made up of technology experts and enthusiasts, and of course, people who have an affinity for Red Hat and open source products. And so the community benefits in many different ways, and some of the things I want to highlight to you today are the peer-to-peer networking of, we have a community, we have various channels in which people interact, including Slack and email and a community forum page. And this allows our community members to interact with each other on a peer-to-peer basis. There are people in this community that have experience with a wide breadth of Red Hat products. So you'll always find someone that you can interact with should you have questions, problems, concerns, something cool that you figured out. This is the group that you can interact with on a day-to-day basis and build relationships and your network. You also have an opportunity to access Red Hat experts. You can give direct feedback on products. We are working with all of our business units and our product teams, and we do briefings and other things, which I'll explain in a moment, that allow you to interact with more Red Hatters. Our Red Hat accelerators are under NDA, so they get early access to product information, roadmaps, features and functions that the engineers might be thinking about. They see things way before it's publicly announced. We try to create a really fun experience at conferences. A lot of conferences are virtual these days, so we try to do that virtually. But when we do in-person events, we also have things like lounges, special opportunities, executive meet and greets, and that sort of thing. It's an opportunity to gain recognition, not only with your peer community, but also at work. You will be potentially able to become the Red Hat go-to guy or gal because you've got a wide breadth of information, you've been exposed to the portfolio, you know people on the inside, so that can help with your professional development. From a personal brand development point of view, we have opportunities to do workshopping or speak with people who are comfortable with public speaking, with blogging, with social media. If that's something that you're interested in, it's also something that we have in terms of community activities. We have benefits for training, special discounts, free benefits as well. And of course, we have cool swag, some of which you'll see today on some of our accelerators. There we go. Slides taking a little bit long. So some of the activities that we do, we have technical briefings, which could be a product deep dive on a specific product, a roadmap session, someone from a business unit coming in to just take straight Q&A. We do various things to get technical feedback, whether that's direct feedback sessions, polls or surveys, small focus groups, advisory councils, alpha or beta testing. like I mentioned before, we do workshops like public speaking, social media, blogging, that sort of thing, if that's of interest to you. And that's run not only by Red Hatters, but also accelerators. So if you are passionate about one of those things too, you have an opportunity to try out your public speaking within the accelerator community as well. And of course, I mentioned events. Not only do we have a big Red Hat Summit event every year where we do lots of activities, but we have events like Convergence, like today, industry events, and in-person meetings for our accelerators as well. The next chart is just a little bit of an eye chart. You can see the wide breadth of activities that we've done so far in 2020 and a few of the things that we have coming up. So we do a lot of different activities with a lot of different business units. So there's really something for everyone. But we record all our sessions, and if you're not able to make everything, that's okay too. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's sort of a pick and choose your engagement and go from there. And then this next slide here, as it comes up, is really just speaking to how valued the Red Hat accelerators are internally and externally. These are some quotes from Red Hatters that have worked with the accelerators community, some photos from some of the events that we did, interviews that we've done, public speaking opportunities, and also social media events that we've done online. So we do a little bit of everything. So if you're thinking about the activities and the things that we do and the access to information that we have, and you're thinking maybe you make a great accelerator, then take a look at the characteristics that we have on this slide. Definitely a strong IT background. Our Red Hat accelerators are hands-on practitioners, sysadmin, DevOps. So they are people with hands on the keyboards that are interested and use our products every single day. Most people have 5+ years inside of our community. All of our accelerators are open and curious. They, even if they don't have a particular product in their work environment, they're always eager to learn about what else Red Hat is doing and sort of what's out there. Obviously, you're passionate about Red Hat, open source, Linux, everything associated with what Red Hat does. Again, trying to build your personal brand. You want to have opportunities for podcasting, for public speaking, that sort of thing. And opinionated. We really want to hear the real, true, tried and true feedback of you using the products every single day. Our business units take that feedback, incorporate it into the product development and the roadmap, and we see that happening every single day. So if this sounds like you and you're interested in applying to become an accelerator, we have an application online. I'll share that URL. We take a look and see if you're actually technical, hands-on a practitioner, not necessarily a people manager. And then we'll do an onboarding interview. We like to meet every single person that we review, and then we'll do an invitation onboarding. As I said, everyone's under NDA, signing the NDA, et cetera, and then you get going. And then we do this for membership for 1 year. It's basically automatically renewed at the end of each year, and you're good to go. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, there's a couple ways that you can let us know your interest. First is you can go to our landing page, information page on the customer portal, which is access.redhat.com/accelerators. There's more information about the program and benefits and an application form there. So if you're interested, you can go there. If you have a few more questions about the program after today as well, you can catch us at redhataccelerators@redhat.com. That will catch myself or any of our program team, and we are more than happy to answer any of your questions that you may have on the program. Also, feel free to drop some questions in the Q&A box too, as I'm sticking around to help moderate. And now, on to the main event with John Spinks. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this panel on Life is Easier with Insights and Smart Management. My name's John Spinks. I'm Technical Marketing Manager for Red Hat Smart Management, Red Hat Satellite, and Red Hat Insights. I'll be operating as your moderator today. I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about my role here and what we're a little bit about my background, which is what I'm going to be asking our panelists next. So technical marketing is an interesting term, so don't discount me immediately just because I have marketing in my title. What that essentially means is I need to deeply understand our products, how they work, how they function, and I need to be able to relate that back to customers and end users in ways that is understandable and relatable. That gives me the opportunity to go to conferences such as Summit, be it in person or virtual, and then webinars such as this. I've been at Red Hat for approximately 3 years. Prior to that, I worked for NetApp for about a decade, and then a series of smaller companies, nonprofits, and government prior to that. My first experience in IT, I was one of the guys, a configuration technician, I believe was my title. What that actually meant back in the day, most PCs didn't have like network cards or came with pre-programmed images. So a corporation would make an order for, say, 100 desktops. I'd have to actually, my company would order the 100 desktops. I'd have to take them out of the box, add additional RAM, add in a second floppy drive if that was necessary. And then I'd have to use an imaging tool like Ghost or something of that nature to actually put an OS on the hard drive and get it to match an existing image. So that was my first experience with, my first job with computers, definitely not my first experience. That was my first real job in IT. And then I learned a little bit about Linux while I was at that job. Wasn't Red Hat at the time. And then later on in my career, I was a general system admin, started working with, I believe it was RHEL 4 at the time that I was just a sysadmin 4. It was my first official Linux sysadmin role. So since then, I've done quite a lot, been in IT for a long time, and certainly excited to hear mostly about my panelists that I have here with me today. So I'm going to start by just asking my panelists to tell a little bit about themselves. I'm going to start with John Mills, and kind of the same format that I just used, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been working with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and our management products as well, and kind of what's your first IT and what's your experience been like?
My name is John Mills. I've been doing Red Hat Linux for about 20 years. I got into the infrastructure management side of the Red Hat house probably about 10, 15 years ago. Deployed an early version of Satellite. Started using Insights when it came out in a small scope. But I've worked in a variety of different industries. And so compliance and disaster recovery become a feature of the business you're running. And so I have some experience at different companies, doing installation planning, disaster recovery for Red Hat as well.
Awesome. Will, if you don't mind taking us off next.
Sure. Morning, John. My name is Will Darden. I've been working with Red Hat Linux for almost 25 years in financial, retail, and hospitality sectors. I've been using Red Hat's suite of tools around Satellite since 2003, so that's 17 years or so, I think now. My start in the IT world was working as a phone tech support person for Intuit TurboTax on DOS, so that will tell you how long I've been around doing this. Nowadays, my primary functions around satellite and using the satellite tools to manage a couple thousand node infrastructure at a credit union. So that's what I'm doing, yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And John LeMay.
Well, hello there, everyone. I am John LeMay. I have, I'm going to say 30 plus years of experience in IT. As far as different Unix and Linux things, probably about 20 years. I've been focused on Red Hat for about the last 7, with about that same amount of time working with Satellite and Insights, probably 5-6 years, something like that.
All right. So with that, wrapping around the title of this particular presentation, Life is Easier with Red Hat Insights and Red Hat Smart Management, these particular products, they've been out there for the purpose of helping you manage your RHEL environment, hopefully making your life easier. Would love to hear a little bit about how you got started with these products. And we'll go into each one individually in a moment. But in general, how do they help you in your day-to-day life? And I'll start with John LeMay, if you don't mind. We'll go reverse order this time.
Sure. Uh, Insights in particular, I would say, is I I like to refer to it as having another person working on the team. It's it's like you have a person who is completely devoted to going over configurations, making sure everything is set to industry best practice, that all patches are installed, and that everything is configured properly. So having another set of eyes that has all of that background that can change, on a daily basis. You never know what kind of security things may pop up from day to day. So to have somebody who is on top of that, and all I need to do is just go into check my Insights console and see what needs to happen. So that's why that's what I think about when I talk about Insights. Is it's like having another person helping me.
Awesome. And on the smart management side of the house, do you have any advantages? And for anybody that doesn't know or isn't as familiar, smart management includes satellite as well as cloud connector. Satellite's probably the far better known thing, but smart management is actually the product that contains the satellite bundle. So, John, do you have any advantages that satellite gives to you in that kind of day-to-day life?
Well, yeah, certainly. As far as patching, which is so I use satellite primarily just as a patching tool. I don't use it for configurations or things like a lot of other folks do. But to be able to maintain the different, a production image, patching image versus a dev patching image that's, will obviously send out dev. Dev with the brand new patches, everything that's as it comes out, and we run our production patches a month behind, so we can get a chance to look at the patches and see if anything's been affected, and before we roll them out to the production environment. So being able to maintain those lifecycle environments separately is huge. I mean, otherwise, it's spreadsheets and manual things, and it's a great tool for just what I use it for, and it's got a lot of other features that I don't make use of personally, but our shop isn't gigantic, so we don't have a huge footprint of Red Hat.
Fantastic. All right, Will, tap you kind of the same question for Insights and smart management. How is that benefiting your life?
So a lot like what John said, instead of another employee, I'll use the term bridge. I think of Insights as sort of a bridge between Red Hat's knowledge and expertise about its own products and my systems. And so being able to use the smart management tools such as Satellite to keep an inventory of my system and maintain that on-prem, and then using the cloud connector to get that information up into Insights, and then having the readily available information in Insights that's up to date and current, to kick out and see what our security posture is or where we are with compliance. I mean, that's sort of the big picture there for me. So it's just this great set of tools that are making my life easier and hopefully reducing the amount of work on my team for compliance and vulnerability management and those things.
Fantastic. Right. And John Mills.
Well, I think my experience with it has been an evolution that we've kind of seen over the years. I remember people used to have an issue in production, open a case, and find out that something that they're doing on every single box might have changed, or their setting wasn't ideal to begin with, and then a new behavior exposed the issue. And then you go back and you touch all the systems and add all the changes to your environment. When you hook up Insights to your environment, there's someone at Red Hat that's aware of that change or aware of a configuration that always should have been there, and they highlight it. And so if you attach a box to Insights over 5 years, you're not going to get the same report out at the beginning and the end. it's going to continue growing. Just like, you'd have an issue with configuration on NTP or Crony, and someone would go out and say, oh, well, we had this issue on the dev box. Now go scan all the servers. Go find the issue that we might be having on 20% of the environment. Build a list, spin up a project, and then go out and fix it everywhere. Or go look at our standard again and see if we need to change our base configuration. Now Insights is doing that, but instead of being backed by a couple members of staff, it's being backed by this large development team. And they're actually aware of the changes that are coming, in advance. And so, just like John was saying, it's like having extra people on the team. Like Will was saying, it's more like a force multiplier where, I have this massive, knowledge of the Red Hat ecosystem, coming down, and whether it's, an SAP product or if it's a network time, product, I'm still going to get the same, intelligence from Red Hat to help me configure that correctly. And since it's checking all the servers, when human error enters the mix, I can say, oh, I just deployed, 10 servers and they're identical. And then Insights will come in and say, well, they're almost identical, and this is how they're different, and have somebody go fix that.
Excellent. So we do want to hear from our audience. We got a number of people on the line here. So we've got a polling question that we want to pop up, because this is, I think, going to wrap into the conversation that we've had here. So in the past year, how much time on average have you spent resolving issues or on unplanned downtime? 5 hours or less per week, 15 hours, 25 hours, 30 or more. For my panelists here, is this something you mind sharing with us as well, like verbally? Do you mind chiming in and saying, hey, this has been my experience with the unplanned downtime? So start with Will, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I had to come off of mute there. You don't want to hear the chickens in the background. In the last year, how much time? Oh boy. I can tell you in the last week, we spent about 8 hours with two people. It'd be almost 16 hours in unplanned downtime this week, by not a problem of our own, but it was certainly unplanned. It's not the norm, I think with the help of Red Hat's tools in the last year, we've really solidified our ecosystem on the Red Hat side. Really got our configuration and our sort of our gold image down to a really solid definition, and that's helped reduce a lot of that. I would say, our on-call list has begun to shrink. The number of on-call events that we've had over the last 12 months has started to reduce, just by simply having these tools at our disposal to help us diagnose these issues ahead of time, or at least prevent these issues ahead of time. Can't give you an exact number, but it's going down. I'll tell you that.
No worries. John LeMay.
Oh, I'd say definitely under 5 hours per week. We don't have a lot of craziness, and it's I'm sure in part due to Insights keeping an eye on things, making sure configurations are set up properly, and that holes are patched and everything is upgraded and kept at a current revision level.
All right. And John Mills.
I got to say, I love this question, because I've actually seen this, happen to me, at various times, over the years using Insights. But there's this, occasional disconnect where things aren't attached, and then they get attached. And without Insights, always less than 5 hours a week, everything's the same, no problems. And then we go add 40 servers to Insights that weren't on Insights, and we got a busy month going and normalizing issues and making things that were the same actually the same. So it's a before and after.
Awesome. I'm going to leave that polling up for another moment or so. Be sure after you've selected your answer, you hit the submit button. For the rest of the questions that we have up here, let's try to make it a little bit more conversational. I'm not going to call on you as much. I'm going to ask for you to just kind of chime in, and like we're sitting all around the fireside. That gives us a a feel hopefully earlier of who the different people are. But feel free to chime on in from this point out and just build upon what the others are saying. Luckily, as most of you said, 5 hours a week or so is what the participants mostly said, and that seems to be what the attendees are saying as well. Is luckily they're not having a whole lot of unplanned downtime, and maybe a lot of you are using Insights as well, as John LeMay said, which could help lead to that. So I want to focus for a moment on Insights. Insights is, out of the products we're talking about, one of the newer services. It's a software as a service offering that's offered by Red Hat. As mentioned, it gives us information about what's going on in your environment. So it takes Red Hat's experience with support and gives you information about what's going on in your environment versus calling in support every time you have a problem. So hopefully it's giving you a little bit of advance notice. Just want to take a moment and share for those of you that may not be familiar with it. It also has services for vulnerability, for compliance, for drift. So we can highlight things like CVEs and whether or not you're in compliance with like HIPAA or PCI. So start with John LeMay, but I'd like you guys to just chime in. Let me stop calling on you individually. What's your experience been like using Insights?
Oh gosh, well, it's from when it first came out, or when I first came across it, which I think was probably due to the accelerators. If not, it was at some point during when we upgraded to the newest version of Satellite that had the Insights panel on it, and to be able to go through and I looked at some things and went, oh wow, these things are not they're not configured the same when they should have been configured the same, or that there are configuration issues, or that there are patches that are not set properly or come up was surprising to me. It was eye-opening. One of the things that I think I had brought up when just talking amongst the other accelerators was the configuration of LACP on a network interface, or obviously a couple of network interfaces. It's not something that I do regularly because we're mostly virtualized now, but going through and configuring it, and there was something that wasn't set properly. I don't recall exactly what it was, but Insights found that configuration issue, and we were able to go in, with the recommendation of Insights and change the LACP configuration to be per best practice. And I would have never seen that. That's not something I would ever review. I mean, it worked. It worked even during failover. It just, I guess, wasn't working. The performance wasn't as good as it could have been. And that's not something that I would have ever found without Insights.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty new to it, less than a year actually, maybe just a little over a year, I guess actually. And John and his team introduced me to it through the accelerators, and I think eye-opening is a good word for it. Once we kind of got all of our inventory in and started seeing, I don't want to say disparities, but some of the differences in configuration that, we do use configuration management tools to keep our systems in check, but that only covers the things that we plan on keeping in check. It doesn't include the things that you don't think about or don't realize may be problematic. And so Insights has been a great view into, you can't know everything about performance tuning. You can't know everything about configuring bonded interfaces or all these things. And so it's great to have. I say it's Red Hat's view, or it's looking at my systems through Red Hat's glasses, so I can see how Red Hat sees my systems. And I don't know, maybe you don't necessarily agree all the time with Red Hat sees, but at least it gives you their perspective on how they see your systems. So
yeah, I have a similar experience as Will's. I've used it a little bit longer, but it's really been just phenomenal with really two buckets. You got the one bucket, which is, system configurations. It'll go out and find some things. It'll even go find like full file systems. We discovered that even though we had
I just
alerting
saw
on the
that.
system.
I just logged in and saw a system with that. I was like, I didn't know it did that. So
Right. Because it rarely happens, but you get a file system, it's full, and there's no monitoring on that file system. And it's like, how long is that going to sit out there? Well, about a day, because it's going to pop up in Insights. The thing that started in the past 2 years that probably has me the most excited about the offering, though, is the application integration. So previously, like when I started using Insights, they were like, okay, you really should use time management. I notice you're not using time management on the system. And it's like, that's great. That's helping other admins, But, I've used SAP and, complex applications, and Insights has started embedding that intelligence, because if you go to the vendor and download the vendor-specific installation guide for version of RHEL you're running, it's like, okay, we'll go through and make sure you set the kernel this way and make sure you have this amount of swap. And well, those rules are in Insights for a growing number of applications. And so, whereas I had to either, put on an application support hat or, contact the application support team and have them put on an OS support hat or set up some meetings and talk to them about it. Now Insights is telling me, hey, you've got this application server and, the kernel's misconfigured for memory segments, or you don't have enough limits on the application user running the app. And that's kind of stuff that I would have to rely on the application team to do. And hopefully they're doing it, but now I can just look at Insights and say, hey, we're misconfigured. We should probably fix that.
I just actually had a similar issue this morning with Mongo, and we had put. I had a couple of servers up, and this was an arbitrator or something else that I didn't think needed the same kinds of configurations that. Like tuning parameters that the database servers would need. And sure enough, Insights came up and realized that this was a database server and said, we want you to, maybe you should disable transparent huge pages, because that's typically something you do with a database server. And it saw that, it realized the use of the server and made appropriate recommendations.
That's great. So you've all been using Insights for a while. Well, you're kind of the newest. John, you've been using it for almost since it's been out. John Mills. What was it like getting Insights adopted in your environment? It is software as a service. There is a little bit of metadata that Insights collects in order to give you all of this great information. Was it challenging to get this past your security team? Kind of what was that process like?
On my end, it was... No, we'll go ahead. You're first.
Okay. I'd say for us, it was pretty easy because, this was back in the beginning of Insights where it did very little. And it's like, hey, we got this tool. It's going to, go out there and look and make sure that, some basic system services are configured correctly and, everything that we have installed is correct. And so we had that discussion and we decided to do it. And the thing which also helped us is that, we'd been an AIX shop, and AIX has another tool which basically scans your system, looks for code compliance, uploads it, to IBM, and then when you open calls, they just go look at the data and they're like, oh yeah, I see you're running this version, and it kind of replaces the sauce report functionality with them. And so we already had that in-house. So it's like, hey, we're moving off AIX, we're going to Red Hat. They have the same type of tool. Can we hook it up? And they're like, yeah, sure.
Same situation exactly. Actually, we also have a pretty decent AIX footprint, and it's the same scenario. It's kind of hard to say IBM. You can do it with the IBM tools, but you can't do it with the Red Hat tools. But the nice thing too is that we already have a working relationship with Red Hat. We already have NDAs and all the paperwork signed, and a lot of the information that Insights collects. You can A, tailor it, or B, obfuscate it so that it doesn't exist out in the Red Hat cloud ecosystem wherever Insights is stored. And so those two things, the obfuscation and tailoring, also help to make your information security teams feel better about the data that's going out there. But in the end, I mean, this is just, it's just basic system info that you would send with an SOS report anyway. So it's not data Red Hat wouldn't necessarily have. So the adoption was easy. Really.
Yeah, that would
install a package and do a configuration file change, and off you go.
Yeah, it was much similar for us too, and it was when I was going over the what was being pulled with my security guys. That was what I told them. I said, we'd pull an SOS report to do, if there's a problem, that's the first thing that Red Hat asks, and it has all of this information and probably more. So it's not anything. And like you say, we have a pretty good relationship with Red Hat. The NDAs and all those kinds of things are signed. So information passing back and forth, as long as it's not anything critical to the company, which it isn't. There's again, at the time when we looked at it was years ago, and I think we're probably Insight's probably looking at some more things today than it was previously, but still I don't think there's a great exposure there.
Yeah, there's been a couple references to the SOS or SOS reports. Those are usually collected in the case of support. They are very expansive. They have a ton of information in them, full log files, because the purpose of those are really to help solve specific problems and help us understand what's going on in your environment. By comparison, what Insights looks at is very, very small. The last average collection I looked at was 384 kilobytes, I think, on average. So it's a really tiny collection in comparison to something like a SOS report, which can get into the pretty large sizes depending on what we're collecting there. As you went through that process and you got approval to use Insights in your environment, did you need to obfuscate anything? You mentioned the controls that we provide as part of Insights. Was there anything that you had to cut out that you're not allowed to send?
Yeah, actually, in our case, it's IP address information. Actually, I just finished working on that yesterday through our config manager tool to finish obfuscating IP address. We looked at host names, but we didn't really have to. And the reason we chose not to is because it kind of makes some of the information difficult to relate back to a system from Insights back into our on-prem environment. And then not impossible, but it's just, host name's just a host name, so who cares? And we haven't had to tailor anything else out. Like, again, the data, what's in there is not anything particularly earth-shattering. So, nope.
And we had a question come in as well. It was asked about SOS reports, but I want to wrap it into what we're talking about with Insights. That process for you to obfuscate the IP addresses, was that easy? Was it hard? What did you have to do to actually do that?
One line in insightsclient.conf, change it from false to true. That's it. And the next report that goes out will have that information obfuscated. So no problem at all.
Yeah, we don't do any tailoring.
Neither do we.
Reckless.
Yeah,
yeah.
in the event that you do need to cut something out that's more complex, because some of the common use cases that we get with these kind of reports are, hey, not only IP address isn't enough. I don't want my company name to ever leave my company's estate. Like I want to make sure that this particular terminology isn't included. Insights does provide a deny list. It's a YAML style list that you can put in, so you can have certain terminology. There's also a configuration file where you can put in certain terms, and all of that is in the documentation. So you've got full control over these actual collections. Did you guys spend any time, or did you have to send it on to your security teams for them to actually look at that collection?
I don't think we did anything. We just kind of looked over what was stated.
Same. Yeah, we just reviewed what was stated. We didn't really particularly review the actual contents of it. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've added our folks to the account so they can actually just browse the reports whenever they want to.
Nice. Very good. And then in Summit this year, we added a ton of new services. I know, John LeMay, you mentioned your experience with LACP, and you probably wouldn't have found that without Insights. But since Summit of this year, so a few months ago, we've added in several new services to Insights. We've added in vulnerability, compliance, drift, policies, and patch. So 5 new services. Have you guys used any of those services?
So we use Watch because we're still beholden to numbers, at least for the time being. So we do have to keep a count and true up with Red Hat. And so subscription Watch has turned out to be a pretty valuable tool in making sure that we're in compliance with our subscriptions within Red Hat. And then the other one, which if you're a pre-Satellite 6 customer and you missed System Compare horribly like I did in Satellite 6 and beyond, Drift was like the tool. I was so happy to see Drift come into Insights and be able to take, it's Drift. It was Drift, right? Yeah. And take 2 systems and compare them together. Thank you. I suddenly had a mental block there. I was like, I'm looking right at it. But be able to compare 2 systems, and figure out the differences between them. I mean, you build, like John Mills said, you end up building another system and they're like, what's wrong with this one system that it's not like this other one? And trying to do that between 2 command lines is not nearly as easy, being able to plug them into Drift and just say, what's different? And boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've just started using compliance, kind of kicking the tires on that. I got to say, compared between the 2 compliance officers, Satellite and Insights, Insights was a much faster compliance setup.
And John LeMay, have you been using any of these new services?
No, I can't say that we have.
All right. So Advisor is still the main one for you. I do want to remind everybody that's listening in, the Insight services that we've all been speaking about, they're included as part of your RHEL subscription. So if you're already a RHEL user today, you have access to Insights. It's included in the subscription. So that's something that you can start kicking off. And as you heard these folks mention, it's something that's been really beneficial to them. I want to move on a little bit and move to smart management, talk a little bit about that experience. You all are very experienced smart management and satellite users. Some of you, as Will mentioned, back from the 5 days. We won't talk about 6.0 too much unless you really want to. But what's your experience? What's your experience been like using smart management, especially in these newer releases? And what kind of things are you using it for? I think in the intro, John LeMay mentioned that he was using it primarily for patching, but what are the big reasons why you've adopted smart management?
Well, it hasn't always been the case, but with the Red Hat ecosystem, I think we've all kind of gotten to this mode now where people are really doing release management. Back in like the RHEL 5 days, there were a lot of shops that were like, well, we'll patch dev on Monday and we'll patch prod on Sunday, and they'll be really close, And then Satellite came out and it's like, why don't we patch them the exact same version? And then with Satellite now, I can build an app server for a team, and it'll be, March, and then they come back and say, hey, no, we can't patch yet, but can I get another server just like the other one, and I can build in March. And without Satellite, that was a troubling question.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We recently switched over to ServiceNow, and along with ServiceNow and all the other headaches it presents, and comes releases and release management. So fortunately, we were already doing life cycles in Satellite, and so it wasn't very difficult for us to marry the ServiceNow release process with what we are already doing in Satellite. We moved from the library to lab to a production environment, and over those windows, 2-week windows or whatever they are. So the features that Satellite has has always, notwithstanding 6.0, has always provided, has always made the smart management license totally worth, or subscription, sorry, totally worthwhile. I've never worked anywhere where I didn't have smart management subscriptions, so I'm not sure what life's like without it, and I'm not sure I could envision that. I'm sure it's going to be very trying to not have some of these tools at your disposal.
Yeah, we were a 5X satellite shop, and
We're having a little bit of audio challenges with your mic there, John. Your headset is struck again.
okay.
Oh, it's back.
All right. So we were a 5X shop for a long time, and a 5X satellite. And when 6.0 came out, I installed a 6.0 to look at it, and was kind of taken aback by how dramatically different from 5X it was. And problematic as any .0 release can be. But it's been very, we really implemented on 6.1, 6.2 maybe. We went to 6.2 very quickly after implementation of 6.1. And every release since then, there's been a lot of new tools, a lot of new features, a lot of new things that really make that upgrade worthwhile. I'm not on 6.7 yet, so I can't speak to the things on 6.7. But it's been very impressive, and just because it was such a different creature than 5X was, it was a little hard to wrap my head around. But once I just looked at it like, okay, it's nothing like 5X. It's just a different thing that has some similar features, and walk through it from there, and then that was fine. But yeah, if you're I guess nobody's using 5X anymore, but if you've ever used 5X in the past, just forget everything that you knew about it, and look at Satellite 6 as a brand new thing.
All right, that's fantastic. So most of you have been using Satellite for a really long time. Are you using it in conjunction with any other products? Like, have you built it into like an Ansible workflow? What is like a patching life cycle, or one of the primary use cases that you have for Satellite? What does it look like?
Well,
nobody's gonna go first.
Since nobody's saying anything,
I'll go.
Go ahead, Will.
So our primary function for Satellite and the smart management aspects of Satellite is for patching and for vulnerability management. Our cadence is monthly and quarterly, depending. We do monthly securities and quarterly bug fix enhancements. So we're trying to stay really current, and we've maintained this cadence now for about 8 years. And we don't typically allow exclusions. Some people I know have products like SAP and Oracle. We do have some of those products, but we're trying our very best to stay current or within one dot release. And so Satellite helps us, the functionality in Satellite helps us maintain that currency. We have some pretty strict mandates from our information security about currency. And so without Satellite, it would be near impossible. We don't, how do I put this? We are moving to Ansible Tower, I'll put it that way. We're using another tool for configuration management now, but we're finding that with IBM adopting, or IBM acquiring Red Hat, and whatever that term is, however you want to do that, and Red Hat having acquired Ansible, it just makes sense to move over to Ansible. And IBM is putting a lot of focus on Ansible tools or Ansible modules for AIX, so that it's kind of a no-brainer. When we looked at config tools 5 years ago, Ansible wasn't a player because it didn't have an enterprise backing, and 6 months later Red Hat acquired it. If I could roll back time I certainly would go back and make that decision again. But I think I think we're going to find that integration between Satellite, Insights, and Ansible Tower is just going to, further increase our productivity, potentially reduce the number of engineers that we need to add. I mean, like, I have a good working team right now, and we're growing at a ridiculous rate. Since I've been where I am, we've gone from 60 servers to, I think we just crossed over 2,000 in 8 years. So we're growing, by my standard, we're going really fast. So being able to manage that with these three tools, Satellite, Insights, Ansible Tower, is going to be really key. And being able to integrate other platforms, IBM AIX, and continue to maintain them through Ansible and potentially Satellite, will also be key for what we're doing. I don't want to say that I've made IBM AIX work with Satellite, but I kind of did. So.
Yeah, we kind of build out Satellite as the center of our ecosystem from a Linux perspective. We have public connectivity through satellites that gives us factor, CMDB type data within the satellite itself, so we can drive some automation from the facts that are in there, and then we can also use that inventory from satellite as kind of the corollary to what the Windows teams would have from an AD computer list. We have that from satellite, so I can go through and tell you, all right, what servers are actually live in our environment that we should be doing reporting on, that should have all these connectivity solutions. I can start with what's healthy in satellite, because it's the last step of our installation process. You have a subscription, you're in satellite, you're healthy, you have a fact report coming in, and then I can build all my tooling underneath that.
Yeah, I would say we're not. We had a plan at the beginning of the year, actually end of last year, to be implementing Tower this year. Things have changed with just kind of the nature of business and everything else that's happened this year. So we weren't as things progressed during the course of the year, we weren't really in the same situation, really wanting to do a rollout of Ansible Tower. But I use Ansible, I guess, engine for the automation piece. So everything's command line, and there's 2 or 3 of us that are comfortable doing command line Ansible things. So we have that's the state of our automation today, with the assistance of Satellite.
Cool. And we had a question come in as well that's, I think, related to this topic, and I think you've answered it in part. But the question is, curious to know from the panel, who patches your servers? So does Red Hat create like patch bundles, or do you actually let your users self-service their machines? Do they have like a click button type interface where they can go out and patch their own systems?
In our case, it's automated. So it's all part of another configuration management tool cookbook that does all the patching for us for now. But the plan is to migrate that to Ansible Tower. We enforce patching. In other words, we push the patches down. We do either autonomous reboots, or we require our application custodians to reboot systems in order to effect new kernels if we're not using kernel live patch for anything. So.
I don't have the
John,
users or dev folks.
Oh. No, you're good now.
Yeah. So in our case, we don't do where the users do their own patching through an automated interface. We push patches down on one night, on a weekend night, once a month, and you get patched whether you like it or not.
Yeah, our users have the ability to do installs, but we like them to request. But in terms of updates, that's something that we manage straight through satellite and then schedule that through a staggered deployment based on landscape environment.
Yep. Same thing
Great.
here.
All right. And about smart management and insights and kind of using the combination of these tools together. Will, I've got you marked as the only person on the panel currently trying out our new Cloud Connector capability. This is something that we just introduced. It's a feature of Smart Management, if you're not familiar with it. So Smart Management contains both Satellite and Cloud Connector. And that purpose of Cloud Connector is to connect Satellite and Insights together so you can remediate issues that you find in Insights from that Insights UI. So you click an execute button. It sends that playbook over to the satellite. The satellite can run the playbook using Ansible remote execution with the user that you've specified. So for anybody that's not familiar with Cloud Connector, which it is pretty darn new, that's what it is. Well, you mentioned that you have some experience using it. Would you mind sharing with us what that's like? What do you do with it, and what value does it bring you?
Sure. Talk about cool sysadmin tricks, right? Go into a web UI that's somewhere out there and see that there's a CVE that applies to, 5 systems. Click a button and go, oh, look at that. 5 minutes later, it's done. On-prem, right? So, and Satellite has that capability, in and of itself. Certainly, you can search for a CVE and find all systems, blah blah blah. But the Insights UI provides sort of that single pane of glass across. Maybe you have multiple satellite infrastructures, so all your inventory is there or whatnot. In our case, what we're just now checking it out. Like John said, it's new, so we're still kind of feeling it out and getting it all configured. But one thing that we're doing is not all patching is perfect. I'm sure the two Johns and I could agree on that. And so any process you have implemented is never 100%. So there's always like 5 systems that, I don't know, they're like, I have sheep on my farm. They're like the 2 sheep that never seem to go where you want them to go. And so, we go into Insights and we can see these 2 systems didn't get that patch. And so after the fact, we can simply go, oh, those 2 systems didn't get it, create this project or create this, the project and playbook and push it down back through Satellite and, back out through the capsules and back down to that system. And it's taken care of. It's you don't have to worry about logging into that system or those systems and, going through the effort of running a Yum update or whatever, or creating an Ansible playbook yourself or creating an Ansible ad hoc yourself to do that work. So kind of a game changer for us right now. I think we're going to be able to reduce a lot of our post-patching mishaps, the time to resolve those to minutes instead of maybe an hour. So.
Cool. And I believe you're the only one currently using that on this particular panel. It is a new feature. It does require Satellite 6.7 or greater. Our 6.8 beta has just now been released about a week ago. So that's why we're not seeing a huge percentage of our current panel using it right now. All right. There's another question that came in from the attendees, and I think this seems like a good place to wrap it in. I'm just getting started with Insights. So can you elaborate on adopting Insights within Satellite and or Tower? And then how might you enable or coordinate groups for reporting or remediation?
Well, I would say you've got 2 options. If you're an Ansible shop, then you can add an Ansible role to a host group and get that all the systems in that group, and it'll just start dropping out there in all the systems. There's also a deprecated way to do it with Puppet currently, but since the future is not Puppet, I would not recommend going that route. But yeah, Ansible is integrated within Satellite itself. So once you get your host added to Satellite, you set up a host group, add the Ansible role in for the Foreman client, and Insights, you'd be well on the way to security and remediation.
Yeah, sounds good. And are any of you using the Insights menu within Satellite? Is your primary way you're using Insights, or are you primarily using the cloud.redhat.com interface? And there is a difference between the two.
I use primarily the satellite interface.
I'm a cloud. You sold me on it once I saw it. I'm there. So.
I'm 50-50.
Yeah, and for all my attendees here that may not be as familiar with the differences, so within the satellite UI, there is an Insights menu item. Insights traditionally was, for the last 5 of the last 6 or so years, was a single service, the service that's now called Advisor. So currently within the satellite UI, that capability is still what's there, and that's the Advisor service. And that's the one that gives you information based off of our configuration and help desk expertise, things like the LACP that John LeMay had talked about. At cloud.redhat.com is where you're going to find those other services. So you're not going to find every service that Insights offer within the satellite GUI. A number of them are only available on cloud.redhat.com, and that will remain the case for at least some time. I don't believe there's plans today to pull any of those other services, such as vulnerability, compliance drift, into the satellite UI. It's going to remain Advisor. But just wanted to point that out for anybody that's using it, because that question does come up a lot. Let's see, I think there was another question we can wrap in here. It is also important to note, if you are a smart management and a satellite user and you're adopting Insights, Insights, it does require a cloud connection. It is software as a service, but by default, satellite, any host that's connected to satellite works as a proxy. So your collection from Insights is proxied by default through your satellite, and that's how those travel. So that's built in. If you're not using satellite, you're interested in Insights, web proxy is still fully supported. And then this other question that came in. Yep, go
John,
for it.
I was going to say, if you have a geographically dispersed satellite, it's not node to satellite, it's node to capsule to capsule. Whatever the path is a node normally follows for, I think it's subscription manager, then it follows the same path for Insights as well, I believe. So that data is not sent directly to the satellite server, it's sent via your capsules and then on out through your satellite server.
Absolutely. All right, and last question I want to touch on this particular topic that came in from a attendee. Are there alternatives to Satellite 6 that you've considered? You guys have been using it for a long time. Have you looked at other options that are out there in the marketplace?
There are other options?
I did not pay him for that yet.
Are they cheaper? I don't know. What's the sell here? Honestly, no. I've used satellite for so long. I really, when satellite diverged from spacewalk, with 6, I briefly thought about hanging on to that, and I was like, well, no. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, since spacewalk just finally retired recently here, and it was sad because I loved spacewalk, but I've seen other tools, there are plenty of other enterprise type tools for configuration management and deployment and all those things, but I don't think one tool represents Red Hat as well as satellite does. And I'm not saying that because, I'm an accelerator. I'm saying that because I've used satellite for so long. It's the tool I go to for managing Red Hat systems. There's just nothing out there, I think, that competes with it as well as satellite does. It was a rough road with 6.0, but we're there now with 6.2, 6.7, wherever we are now, 6.7.2. So totally where we are.
Yeah, I've used Spacewalk and SUSE Manager in Satellite 5 and 6, and even 6.0 was better than SUSE Manager for Red Hat support. So it's just, there's really no other tool out there if you're actually trying to manage your environment. If you're trying to make sure you can do release management and have separate patch bundles from an NFS share or an HTTP server, then you're not really talking about these management tools. So I know some people go that type of route, but it's not really comparative because you're not managing systems with that. You're just making patches available.
That's awesome. All right. So that kind of wraps into the next question pretty well. Talking about other alternatives, we know that no product is perfect. We know we had a bit of a road with 6.0 when we first introduced it as we moved from Satellite 5 to Satellite 6. But we're a long way from that. We've done a ton of work on satellite and smart management, making them better. We've had all these new services that we've added into Insights. How could we continue to make things better? What areas can we do to improve Red Hat's enterprise Linux system management?
Well, if you asked me, which I think you just did, I'd like, and I see this coming. It's kind of the writings on the wall is that moving away from Puppet and being pure Ansible, because there's still with 6.6 at least there's still a reasonable amount of Puppet under the hood, but like I said, the writing's on the wall. It looks like everything's pointed towards complete underpinnings with Ansible eventually. So I mean that would be my only comment. As and I said before, with every iteration that comes out, new features, new things, more stability. It's you guys are doing a good job. Whatever you're doing, keep up the good work.
Areas I'd like to see improvements in, always reporting for me. And the satellite team and Insights team is leaps and bounds of where we were a few years ago for reporting. But all my reporting has to go to InfoSec or an executive person, and so the ability to kick out whatever those reports are, whatever they need to make them feel better is that helps me. It helps me reduce the amount of time I have to spend writing custom Python scripts, to talk to the API and get all that stuff out. And we're way ahead here. Just the cloud stuff is making that so much easier. But my other pain area is content synchronization and content management, particularly with our capsules. And it's gotten better, over the several last iterations, but we continue to sort of struggle with keeping our capsules in sync. We run capsules behind load balancers, so it's a particularly, I don't know, maybe not unique, maybe that is the right word, configuration. It's documented and supported by Red Hat, but there's some extra gotchas with content synchronization. So I think a more integrated approach to having load balance capsules would be super. And also an HA version of satellite would be super, because that would help me meet some of our DR requirements. That's a big sticking point that we suffer from right now, is that DR with satellite is not simple. Recovery would be very tedious, I think. Even with the backup restore method, I still think it will be pretty challenging. At least a couple of tests I've done, it hasn't been easy. So those are areas for improvement in my mind.
Yeah, I think for me, it's boils down to provisioning. I've always, kind of personally fought against having, templates and, drive cloning deployment of OSs, just because there's so much time involved in making minor changes to, a dozen different blobs of drives across your environment. Whereas if you're just going to alter a Kickstart file, go to a new version on the Kickstart file you used for your builds, and you just made a quick change, do a quick deployment, and it's tested. But I think with the advent of, or the proliferation of cloud technologies and more folks, putting some workloads in the cloud, I think, doing more of image deployment is getting a resurgence. And there's no quick button to press in satellite provisioning to say, hey, I have an idea for an image. Can you just create it and stick it in the cloud for me? You can use satellite to do steps, and then upload it after you capture it, and then generalize it there. And it's like, can we just automate that? That's my wish list. It's like
we use another tool for that,
right? No.
But
we'll just add a 7th bit, an 8th bit. It's no big deal.
I know what you mean. We end up using another tool. It's similar to Compose. That we've looked at Compose, and that's helped a lot in streamlining that. But you're right. There's no easy button for getting images updated. It's still you'd think as far as we've come in the cloud world that would have progressed a little bit by now.
Yeah, I can do it all myself, bootstrapped, and it's not a big deal, and I can build it in a small space. It seems like we just automate that.
Right.
Just be done.
There's only one of you, and there's only one of me, and there's all these other people that we need to do this to, and so.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And we did have another question come in, so we don't have a slide for this one, but I think it's a fantastic question. All of these tools, all of these services, all of these features that we've added to tools like Insights and Smart Management and Satellite, we've also had a lot of change in IT. So we've now added in, containers and Kubernetes and cloud-based deployments. Those weren't a thing, say, 30 years ago. So the question that came in is, today, now, do you think it's easier to manage systems than it was like 30 years ago?
No. Because of what you just said, right? There's Kubernetes. There's I don't know. Pick your orchestration platform or container platform. Pick your application. There's I don't know. On the Linux side, we probably maintain I would say over 200 different applications across our RHEL environment. There's so many systems and there's so many applications, and guess how many administrators there are still the same number of administrators there were, and that systems admin to server ratio is just continues to grow, and there's more expected out of us with the same number of people or the same number of resources in a lot of cases. So I think it's more challenging, but it leaves room for more awesome automation too. There's a lot more tools out there to help us too than there were 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
No, go, John. That's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, I would say I would agree that I think since you said 30 years, I'm gonna go back to 30-year-old technology. The fancier a VCR you get, the harder it is to program, and the more things you can do with it, right? And that's nowadays we have a much fancier VCR, and it's got a lot of features, and it can do anything you want. Like you said, containers. What container platform are you using? What cloud system are you using? Which cloud systems are you using? Are you in Azure and AWS and several different places, and maybe maintaining a private cloud too? It's a lot harder. There's a lot more going on, and we have, thankfully, great tools like Satellite and Insights, or else, I keep harping on this. It's like having another person, but that's exactly what it is. It's we have, our job is harder than it ever was, and not getting any easier anytime soon. So it's you have to use automation. You have to use these tools, or else you just work 80 hours a week.
Yeah, I would say
John,
all you have to do is consider compliance. I mean, in the late 90s, I remember the team went out and we discovered there were maybe 3 published security benchmarks, that were serious ones that we should consider, but they were really just kind of like scripts. Like, hey, I edited this file and I added this content, and then I removed this file, or I chmoded this file, and that was the security benchmark, was a script. And so we go through the script and find out what seemed reasonable and what didn't, and we build out a profile. Now there's like a dozen or more like published security standards, and then you got to decide if you want to have an environment where your HIPAA boxes are the same boxes as your PCI boxes, and so I want to have one build that meets both requirements, or I want to have 2 different builds for those environments. And then how many OS levels do I have in the mix? So I think it's much more complex now because I think the rigor is just higher. There's a lot more requirements from a patching cadence, security, and segmentation standpoint that you can end up with a very ugly scenario, even if you have very few systems.
Yeah.
It just made me have a flashback to Bastille. I don't know if you remember Bastille, but that was like one of my first exposures to hardening scripts was using Bastille to secure systems. So it's a long way from there.
30 years ago, we were shipping tapes around, not so much. It wasn't this always connected experience that we have today. So if you're talking about an individual management of physical systems in some aspect, that's got simpler because you can connect to it. You can do automations. There's things that you can do to make your life a little easier. But as the technology has grown, the security risks have grown. That's definitely led into another layer, and technology never sits still. We always find new attack vectors, new risks, and we've got to get these things addressed. And somebody chatted in that tape still exists. It's been dying for 30 years, and yeah, that's true. Still got her back in tapes. And still got, some of this old technology never goes away. I've still got a computer here with a CD drive, but I got a laptop that hasn't had a CD drive ever. Tape backup still exists. There's always a need for that 3-2-1 backup model. But yeah, the technology's changed so much. It's definitely made things difficult to keep up.
Air-gapped backup will always exist.
That's true.
All right. And with 10, 12 minutes left, gets us to our last question. Thinking about the attendees here, folks that have perhaps not ever even adopted these tools or are just getting started on their journey for something like Insights, what advice would you give to maybe some starting out sysadmins or some people that aren't yet using these tools, even if they're very senior?
Jump in.
Well, I would. Yeah, exactly. I would. That's the recycled, how should we handle cloud in the future type question. It's get out there, get into it, and then figure out how you want to use it, kind of thing. And that's where it is in Insights. Just to hook that thing up, start with the lab, start with infrastructure, roll it up the stack until you get comfortable with it. But definitely get going.
It's never too late to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think Red Hat's offering a lot of these tools, as part of your regular subscription. So they're there, and if you can make use of them and work with your InfoSec groups to make use of them, that's pretty key. But yeah, I said it was Satellite 6 when it came out, but it was such a whole different animal. You really need to spend time with it, and I think that's true of a lot of Red Hat's newer products. Is you just need to get dirty with them, get them in your environment, check them out, figure out what they can do for you and how they can help you. And you know what? And as always, if you need help selling it, I'm certain Red Hat has somebody hanging around that's willing to help you sell it to people on the inside.
Absolutely. We did have another question that popped in. This might be a great one for your feedback. Are there any simple automation scripts, or even not scripts, places that you can go to find automation scripts that you found useful or has made your life easier?
Ansible Galaxy.
Right. I was just about to say that. Ansible Galaxy, yeah, for sure. It's the wave of the future. So that's where everything's going.
You guys are forgetting the best place to go find Ansible scripts. You hook up a system to Insights, and then you go look at the Ansible remediation for the rule, and just download that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, if we hadn't mentioned it enough, if you find an issue with Insights, it will create that playbook for you, and you don't have to use it ad nauseum. You can go into it, you can edit it, you can modify it, you can make it your own, but it always gives you a great starting place.
Yeah. Just this morning, I was doing that with, found something new. It's always something. And in there with the one-click remediation from Satellite.
Awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
it's always been a valuable feature because, there may be a rule which is not as obvious. What does this really mean? What's this really complaining about? Why is this check really going off? And the check code and the remediation code are generally both provided. And so you can see, oh, that's really why we're failing, and that's really what they want us to do to fix it.
And it's a lot easier to read than the SCAP XMLs. So if you've ever used SCAP.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead and start winding this down. I do want to share some resources and next steps for everybody. You've heard a lot during the course of this call about Red Hat Insights. Again, remember, it is included as part of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription. If you've never used it before, it's a really simple process to get started. All you really have to do is install the client. It's included with the base RHEL repo, or if you're running RHEL 8, chances are it's already pre-installed for you. And the only thing you would need to do is run the registration command. It's insights-client-register. And of course, as mentioned, if you're using like host collections and satellite, you can add in the Insights system role that will go ahead and do that activation for you, or there's playbooks available on the Getting Started page. So we've tried to make it really simple for you to get started with Insights and start seeing results like those that have been mentioned throughout the course of the conversation today. There's an intro video out there, and there's an Insights blog, but the key place is this red.ht/insights_start. That's our Getting Started page. Or if you just Google for Red Hat Insights Getting Started, it's probably your first or your second link that you're going to find right there, and it walks you through all the resources. Or even now, if you already have a Red Hat account, go to cloud.redhat.com, and there's actually now a new button that's within cloud.redhat.com itself that talks about how to register. It's so new, I don't even remember what it's called off the top of my head. I'm going to have to look real quick and remind myself what this new option is called. But right inside of cloud.redhat.com, there's a button on that left-hand nav that's now called Register Systems. You tell it if you want to register through Subscription Manager, through Satellite, or through a public cloud provider. It'll ask you what version of the OS you're using, if it's 6, 7, or 8, and if you want to use an automation script like Ansible or Puppet. And if you choose automation, it will download it for you, or it'll give you step-by-step. So it's a great new feature that we've added right into Insights itself. For smart management, most of our resources are around satellite that we've got on this particular slide. The satellite blog is a great place to go for information. We're updating stuff regularly on there. So as new releases come out, new features, or some of our internal engineers or TAMs write blogs about what's going on with insights or features that are helpful for them, you can find them there. And then with that, thank you so much for the panelists for taking the time, for sharing your information with us today, for going ahead and talking about your experiences with Insights, smart management, and the value that it's brought. Hopefully it has made your life easier. And for those of you that haven't yet adopted, we hope that you'll see that life is easier with Red Hat Insights and Red Hat Smart Management. Thank you all for those of you that have joined. Really, really appreciate your time and attention. After this is over, you will get a link to the recording in your email, and that should be the most of what you get in terms of marketing communications from this, because that was actually one of the questions that got asked in the chat. Am I going to get deluged with marketing emails after this event? You'll get notified that this is out there, and then past that, that should really be it. If you already have a Red Hat relationship, you shouldn't get any new emails based off of your registration to this event. But thank you all so much for your time, your attention. John Mills, John LeMay, Will Darton, thank you so much for being a part of the Red Hat Accelerators. Thank you so much for attending the call today and sharing your information and insights.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be involved.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.